2, 1. Welcome, everybody. I'm Lori Hines with Just Among Friends. We are here with another episode where we share friendships with people across the world who have the same heart and same mind, which is to align our hearts with the Jewish people and the land of Israel. So welcome to Just Among Friends. We have a very special guest today. Before I announce who our guest is, I want to give you a heads up on who's going to be coming up down the road very soon. So, and then we'll come back to today's speaker, a very dear friend of ours. So next Sunday, we're going to be joined by an interview with Jeremy Gimpel and Ari Abramovitz from Our Little Farm. The following Sunday, it's going to be recorded with Jeremy and Ari, so there will be no live episode next Sunday. The following Sunday, we'll be back to a live, and we'll be hosting Rabbi Chaim Eisen out of Jerusalem. We hear he's going to try to join us from his sukkah. We'll be in Sukkot during that time. That'll be fun. And then followed by that, on October 3rd, we're going to have a recorded conversation with Nanti Rome, an Orthodox Jew who lives in Judea and Samaria. And so that will be a recorded conversation. So those are the three coming after today. But let's go back to today. And today we are so excited to have our dear friend, who many of us on this call and who will be watching this know personally, and that is our dear friend, Sondra Baras. Welcome, Sondra.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you. We're excited to have you. So, I think I want you to tell us who you are, then I want to tell people how I met you. So please share for those who may have not had the privilege of meeting you yet. Tell us about you.
Okay, well, my name is Sondra Baras. I'm an Orthodox Jew. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and moved to Israel with my husband, and then only 2 children. In 1984, we now have 5 children, 9 grandchildren, and a 10th on the way. And yeah, it's fun. And we have been living in Karnei Shomron, which is a town in Samaria, since 1987. And, many years ago already, I think almost 24 years ago, I kind of fell into this connection with Christians. I was a major advocate for Judea and Samaria. That was my passion. And, was even working in advocacy for Judea and Samaria for a while. And then these Christians came our way and said, you need to be reaching out to Christians. And I said, okay, what is that? Who is that? What is this all about? And this was at a time where really no one in Judea and Samaria, with rare exception, was reaching out to Christians in any way or had even met Christians. So I guess you could say I was a bit of a pioneer in all this. And a number of the people that you are hosting on this meeting are people that came along to me at some point and would say, "Oh, tell me about these Christians. Who are they?" But today, thank God, we have been Christian Friends of Israeli Communities is the organization I helped to found, and we have been connecting Christians from all over the world with the communities in Judea and Samaria for all these years.
That's amazing. Well, I can tell you personally, and many of us here have visited some of your communities, and it was an extraordinary experience that we don't forget. There is something very special, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, about the people who live in Judea and Samaria. Very, very special. Let's start though. Maybe we should start with the communities, and then I want you to speak to us about covenant, because really they go hand in hand. These communities that you're helping do tie into our second topic, which is covenant, and that's going to be for our Christians. So tell us about your communities.
Okay, well, Israel was established in 1948, a major miracle, but this whole area in the center of Israel, what we call the biblical heartland, or Judea and Samaria, was left out. Jordan at that point occupied it illegally. And, at that point, Israel was so unbelievable appreciative that the miracle of having our own state came to pass, that, and there was a terrible struggle and absorbing new immigrants and Holocaust survivors and all that, nobody was thinking beyond that. And then 1967, Jordan Egypt and Syria joined hands to attack Israel. And at that point, it really was a miraculous thing, not only that Israel wasn't destroyed, but in just 6 days, Israel managed to repel the attack and liberate all of Judea and Samaria. And, I was recently reading an article about that. They interviewed somebody who was actually, let's say, there at the time, and said that there was quite a debate as to whether Israel should try to, liberate Judea and Samaria. And, I like to think that God kind of tipped the scales there, somehow put it into the hearts and minds of the generals and the people who ultimately made the decision. I think it was a bit of a maverick move. And here we are, suddenly had Judea and Samaria, and, places like Hebron and Bethlehem and Shechem and the mountains of Judea and Samaria. These are places that Jews not only weren't in control of before 1967, but they couldn't even go there. And so you have this land, and I think one of the most amazing things was the response of people of faith, who understood that this was not just a military victory, but that God had a hand in this, and that this was step 2 in the fulfillment of prophecy. And that means you don't just have this land and go out there and look at it from afar, or even go and visit from time to time and take a few pictures and then go home and look at your photo album. But like God said to Joshua, every place you will put your foot, I will give that land to you. That was a mandate to us at that point. And I felt it, and people like me felt it. And so that meant going out and settling the land. And that's really what the settlement movement's all about. And what began as a handful of people here and there, we now have more than 150 Jewish communities of all sizes, including 2 large cities, quite a number of towns, and many more small communities, all throughout Judea and Samaria, with close to 500,000 Jews. This is an amazing thing. And all this time, the world is saying, you don't belong there, you don't belong there. And we, not important people, ordinary people, are just picking up and moving there and saying, no, this is our land.
It's amazing. In conversation before, I've mentioned to you and to others who may be on this call who know me, that there is something unique about the people who live in these communities, who make a choice. It's a choice. They can live very comfortably in Tel Aviv or Netanya or the Golan or somewhere beautiful, and but it's not that they choose to live in Judea and Samaria. And it is, the way I say it and the way I see it, is that they are living with extreme purpose and strength, and they are a source of inspiration to me. I want to share a picture with you guys now. Give me one second. Let me pull up. I'm going to have to do this DIY method because I can't get it to transfer from one device to the other, but I'm going to try to move my iPad. I want you guys to see, I'm going to flip my camera and show you a picture of a visit we did to a community, one of the communities in Judea and Samaria. Oh, hang on. We have a guest showing up. Let me let that person in. All right. Let me switch my camera. All right. So here is a picture of a community we got to visit, a community that Sondra works with. Tell us about this community. I'm going to show you a couple of pictures while Sondra talks.
This is Malelevo. Now I recognize the woman there is Mina Brody.
Look at those children. Look at those little Jewish children. Aren't they cute?
She developed this whole petting zoo there, and she's devoted to that. And it's one of the first projects we did there to give her funding that she needed to set up the petting zoo.
Oh,
and
so
it's just a lovely little community on a lone hilltop. It's I would say between Ariel and Shiloh, for those of you who've been in the area. Just a wonderful group of people, religious Jews.
Oh, they were so hospitable to us, and they welcomed us at drinks and treats, and the kids inside the petting zoo. They're so cute. I love that picture. Okay, so that's one of the communities. You support many communities, am I right?
That's right. Right, dozens of communities.
Okay.
Any community in Judea and Samaria who wants this connection, this relationship with Christians, they're welcome to be part of it. And most of the communities are part of what we're doing.
That's fantastic. Well, back to what you said, many people of faith, Christians and Jews, totally see and understand the significance of these communities. And that's why we're so drawn to supporting that, because it is bigger than us. It is a God mandate, like you were saying. And who does not want to work with God, right? I mean, who does not want to be on the right side of history?
Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
this leads me to my next question, which is about covenant. So is this a Christian thing? Is it a Jewish thing? What is this? And what does covenant have to do with all of this?
Well, covenant is biblical. It's just right there. In Hebrew, the word for covenant is brit. Now, some of you may know the word brit because that's a word that's used for the circumcision ceremony of a Jewish baby boy. On the 8th day, he's circumcised, and that's called a brit. But what is that circumcision? That's part of a covenant that God entered into with Abraham and through Abraham to the Jewish people. And in fact, there were a few different covenants that God entered into with Abraham. And really that's where it begins. And the covenants with Abraham are a little different than the covenants we have later on, because I would say covenants usually, when I think covenant, I think contract. Okay. Contract is usually between two people, maybe two business associates or whatever. And it usually means that each side gives and takes. And if one side breaches the covenant or the contract, then it usually means that the covenant is over, the contract is over. Perhaps one side needs to pay punitive damages to the other. Remember, punitive damages like punishment. Okay, so that's the usual format of a contract and a covenant. But when God enters into a covenant with Abraham, sometimes it's by a covenant, sometimes it's just outright promises. But even the covenants with Abraham really are more one-sided. Okay, and I think God uses the word covenant in that case to kind of cement it further. When you say you promise, okay, I'm gonna give you a lollipop tomorrow. Okay, you're supposed to stand by your word, but sometimes you don't, and that's not good. Okay, now when God promises something, clearly he's going to stand by his word, because he's not us, right? He's God. Right. But on the other hand, when God wants to convey to humanity that he's not just promising, he's covenanting, so then he may even call a promise a covenant to give that extra stamp. No, this is far more serious. So that's the original things. And if you think about it, if you look in Genesis 12, God first promises the land to Abraham, to his children. And that's how it begins. It begins with that promise. And then God repeats that promise through covenant. One of the things that I love about, again, we see so many of these promises, but I want to just refer to one of the promises that God makes to Abraham. In Genesis 13, verse 15, he says, "For I give all the land you see to you and your children forever." Okay, so here that forever adds this extra, strength. All right, so I take that forever thing, and now let's move on to the real covenants. And the real covenants take place between God and the nation of Israel after they leave Egypt. There are two major covenant ceremonies and texts. One is a covenant at Sinai, and right after Revelation, there is a ceremony of covenant, and the actual text of that covenant actually shows up later. It's in Leviticus, Leviticus 26, 26, okay? And their format there is, if you obey all my statutes and laws and then I'm going to give you all these blessings and all these good things are going to happen to you. And if you disobey, then you're going to get all these punishments and curses, okay? And then later on in Deuteronomy, we have the first covenant was at the beginning of their 40 years in the desert. And the next covenant really starts at the very end. And it is first introduced in Deuteronomy 11, where Moses said that there's going to be this ceremony on Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal after they enter the land. And he calls this ceremony the blessings and the curses. But that's really what, like we talked about contract, if you breach a contract, there's punitive damages. And I said, think punishment. Okay. So in this case, when you do what God expects of you, you will, reap the rewards. And when you disobey, then you get the punishments or the curses. All right. So you have this parallel kind of thing that man has obligations and God has obligations. Man does what he's supposed to, God will reward. And if man doesn't do what he's supposed to, God will punish. Okay. But keep in mind that, and the text of that covenant is the end of Deuteronomy 27:28. Okay. But what happens? How does the covenant end? You did all these bad things, therefore you get the curses. And what are the curses? The ultimate curse is a progression of curses from bad to worse. And the very end ends at the end of 29, Deuteronomy 29. And the very ultimate bad curse is God is going to throw us out of the land. And here comes the dilemma, okay? In an ordinary contract, if you breach it, the contract is done. So here it would seem you breached it. You know, God is saying what will happen in the future, but there'll come a time, and we know this happened, when the Israelites sin and they follow pagan gods and all that. And God, that's it. He exiles them from the land. So then you might think, end of covenant. No, because first of all, remember, God said to Abraham, forever. And unlike when I promise you a lollipop, you know, tomorrow, well, I'm human and I may change my mind. But God is infallible. God is perfect. So if God says forever, he means forever. And anybody who thinks that God changes his mind, that I don't know, that it's something that is so, I don't know, it's like so anti-God to say that God changes his mind. Because God changes his mind means God makes mistakes. And God, who is perfect, cannot possibly make a mistake. You know, you got to get, okay, so what happens? And this is the key, and I know I'm taking a long time, but I just want to sum this up here. In Deuteronomy 30, okay, God says, after the blessings and the curses, I'm going to bring you back. So God makes it very clear that it will be forever, that there will be a period of punishment, but that's not a breach of the covenant, that the covenant is everlasting. And in Deuteronomy 30, he says, I will gather you up from the far corners of the earth and bring you back to the land that your fathers inherited, and you will inherit it. So everything that we are seeing today in Israel, and especially with the growth and settlement of Judea and Samaria, is an expression of God fulfilling his covenant. This is what it's all about.
This is what it's all about. I love that, Sondra. It's so well said, so well explained. I just, you know, when I'm sitting here listening to you, I think to myself, this is exactly the response to people who think God is done with the Jewish people. If they think that because of some misunderstanding of covenant, then it doesn't bode well for them either, because God can change his mind on them too. And so that's a real bad way to think.
Right.
You know, I mean, so that's a moving target. That is something, like you said, that's not God, that's anti-God. So thank you for sharing that with us. Now, listen, we want to wrap up. We want to have a time for Q&A if we have somebody who wants to ask you a question. But before we do, please tell us if we want to learn more about these communities, if we want to support your work, to support God's promises. How can we do that? Can you give us a website or information?
Okay, so if you see next to my name, I put my website. It's CFOIC.com, and that stands for Christian Friends of Israeli Communities. So go on that website. We have tons of resources, by the way, films, articles, everything. And just do contact us and you'll find me, you know, send me an email or just through the contact us. And ask me any questions and get involved. We need you. We need our partners out there to work with us.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. CFOIC.com. Okay, great.
That's right.
Anne or Mike, do you guys have anything to add to our conversation? Please unmute yourself if you do. Hi, Mike.
Well, I met Sondra at a restaurant many years ago. 2007, I think, Sondra. But Sondra, you're a joy. We just want you to know how much we just love you to death, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, we do go back a very long time, and it's always good to see you.
Yes. I can't wait
Thanks,
to see
Mike.
you in Israel.
Good, amen.
Amen.
Ian, what do you have?
Well, it very, very shortly is that I think one of the greatest misconceptions that Christians have is that we simply do not understand the difference between a contract and a covenant. And if we did,
Agreed.
I think things would be much different. So I just encourage, that's my one point of encouragement to pastors and Sondra. I'm going to send this out. You did such a beautiful job. 5 or 6 minutes. I might get Lori to even cut it for me to that of contract and covenant, because it's the only, as Lori said, God doesn't change his mind, and if he did, we're in deep trouble.
Right.
And there's no other way to end this conversation than with that right there. That's the point. Thank you. Sondra, it was a joy to see my friend and to have you on our show. Thank you for spending time with us. I know it's late where you're at, so we hope you get to bed soon and have a good night's rest. Thank you all friends who are joining us. I have friends here, Judy and Thomas, or Judy's joining us from Sweden. We have friends all over the world that are with us now. And if you're watching this recording, thank you for tuning in. Please share this with your friends. So we need to get this message out so we can all be together and grow our circle of friends. I'm Lori Hines with Just Among Friends. Thank you all. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, Sondra. Thank you, Sondra. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye, Barbara.